Okay, so there's a couple things that I wanted to share today. One is why introverts tell the best stories, and also how extroverts can tap into their superpower or their story power. The next thing I want to share is how to craft a story that sells, and I'll talk about different story arcs. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but I'll talk about where you can go and do a little bit more research on this. My favorite movies that you can use for creative inspiration, and even some recent ones that I think have been really well done. And then also how to extract the best stories from your day, which is a strategy that you can use to craft great emails, sales pages, all sorts of just random content, social media posts, whatever it is. So let's talk about why introverts tell the best stories, and also how extroverts can tap into their story power. I think the reason, and I kind of mentioned this already, but the reason that introverts tell the best stories is because we can process as we speak, but also because we're always observing. I remember when I was younger, I wasn't very outspoken or very loud. I wasn't always the one who, popped up with something to say. And it was because I was always observing. Like, I was always paying attention. And often, like, I'll see interactions between people and I'll see something coming before it even happens. So for example, there was a time where I was watching someone who was at a buffet, and she was getting this was actually while we were in Egypt, I remember. She was getting her food from the buffet line, but her sleeve was like hanging down. And I saw that the sleeve is about to dip into this yogurt looking thing. So I literally just like went under her sleeve and just kind of cupped it like this and pulled it to the side. And she looked down, she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I don't know if she's an extrovert, introvert, but my point is that I'm always observing. A lot of times people are just, not paying attention to what's going on. They're not paying attention to life. They're not in the present moment. And it's important for you, whether you're introvert or extrovert, to be in the present moment, meaning being grounded, right? So in this moment right now, I feel the cool air that's coming from the air condition, because I learned to turn the air condition on and put it on low once I get in here and I get going and I start getting warm. So I feel the cool air coming in. I can hear the sound. I'm also able to every now and then look down and see, we had a spammer come in or whatever it is. Like, I'm in the present moment. I'm not thinking about what I want to do later or what happens after this. It's just right now I'm in this present moment. And I feel like this is one really great way for you to tap into your storytelling power. Before we get into how to turn it into sales, just how to tap into your storytelling power. It's really just being in the present moment. Where are you right now? What does your body feel like right now? What are you experiencing? What do you see? What are you blocking off? We have a, focus vision, we have peripheral vision, and then we have things that we're not even paying attention to. Even though I know that there's a door right here, which it's off camera, so you can't see it. I know there's a door right there, but I'm not paying attention to it right now. I know there's a bed over here in this room. I'm not paying attention to it right now, even though it's in my periphery. I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. So that's one of the most important things when you want to get good at telling stories, is being in the moment and being present. All right, secondly, let's talk about how to craft a story that sells. What does it mean when a story sells? Stories always sell. They are selling an emotion. They're selling a feeling. They are selling the outcome, the end of the story. There's always a moral of the story, the purpose of the story, the ending of the story. And the moral of the story is always to get you to feel some type of way. So whether you realize it or not, your stories are always selling. Instagram stories, for example, when I was sharing some of the clips from my trip, at first I was going to do like a recap and just get on camera and say, okay, well, this is what we did today. It's me looking at my camera. This is what we did today, and XYZ, this is what we're doing tomorrow. And then I realized that the best way to bring everybody along would just be to lend you my eyes. So as we went to different places, I tried to pan around. I tried to make sure that I was also capturing our guide whenever, he was kind of talking about some of the historical significance of the sites. I wanted to make sure that you saw everything as I saw it, or as best as possible. When you create and craft a story, that's your goal. Facts tell, stories sell, which is the title of the email that I sent out preparing you guys for this live stream. The facts of the story are going to tell people what happened. Today we went here. Today I'm doing this. Right now I'm sitting down doing a live stream. Those are all facts. But stories sell. The story of now I'm paying attention to putting the air conditioner on before I sit down to do my live streams because I know how hot it's gonna get. That's a story. The fact would be I changed the setting on my air conditioner to drop down a couple of degrees. That's the facts. So when you're crafting a story and thinking of the story as a sales piece, you need to think about what emotion do I want this person to feel at the end? Do I want them to feel elated? Do I want them to feel a little bit sad, pensive? Help me a little bit, this vocabulary. Do I want them to feel, excited? There's the, I just heard it. Do I want them to feel excited? Do I want them to feel unstoppable? What emotion do I want this person to feel? When you have that in mind, you can start pulling from whatever story you want to tell. So let's assume that I want to tell a story about the lady with the sleeve in the yogurt. If I know that, okay, that's something that happened, and the outcome of the story, I want people to realize that the moral of the story is someone's always looking out for you. So you notice how I distilled that down into one topic. There could be multiple other applications for that story. The other moral of the story could be something like, you should pay attention to what you're doing. So notice how one is a positive emotion, and then the other is I want to influence someone to feel a negative emotion. You have to understand what emotion you're going after when you choose to start your story. Now that I know that I want to go after the emotion of someone's always looking out for you, you have, you're loved, you're cared for, and it's this positive emotion, I'm going to tell the story from that perspective. So I'll start the story by saying, I was at a buffet and everyone was doing their own thing. So I'm starting to develop the atmosphere of no one is paying attention to anyone else. Then I noticed there was a lady at the buffet who was reaching over to get some food and her sleeve was drawn down and it looked like the sleeve was about to catch in the yogurt. And I can go back through and add lots of details. Like she had a beautiful dress on or a beautiful long sleeve shirt, whatever it is, I can add the details. It looked like silk or satin or whatever. And right before that sleeve was going to catch in the yogurt, I reached my hand out, grabbed the bottom of her sleeve and pinned it up. And she realized what she was about to do. And she looked at me in gratitude. That moment made me realize that someone is always looking out for you. Now, if I wanted to swap it around and sell the emotion of you need to pay attention to what you're doing, I would start the story a little bit differently. I would start the story with, I was at a buffet and people were all over the place. It was almost like chaos, but I finally found the food that I wanted and it was chicken. But lo and behold, there was this lady that was in front of me. She was rushing and reaching to get her food. And as she was rushing, I noticed that her sleeve was dipping down and it was about to hit the yogurt. So just in time, I grabbed the sleeve and I pulled it up and she looked at me in gratitude. And meanwhile, I told her thank you, but I was thinking, you need to pay attention to what you're doing. It's so important that we pay attention to what we're doing because there's so much chaos going on in the world. Do you see how one story, one simple act can turn into two different outcomes, two different emotions? And this is how we use stories to sell. All right, let's go over my favorite movies that you can use for story inspiration and really some recent movies as well. Movies are story. There are multiple different story arcs that can be found in movies. Generally speaking, a really good story has an overarching theme and then subplots or sub-themes. Whenever you read comments from reviewers or people who have watched a movie and you see stuff like the characters weren't developed or I didn't really care about this person or I don't really know why this happened there, it's because their story wasn't described or developed well enough. So for example, one of my favorite movies is The Matrix. It's always a really easy one to go back to because it has one of the most popular common story arcs, which is an individual is asleep. They don't realize who they are. They go on this journey to discover who they are. And along the way, they realize that they already knew who they are. They just had to accept it or assume the throne is what I like to call it. That's the same story arc we see in The Lion King. In almost all of the Disney movies, that story arc is called the hero's journey. We got an individual who is the hero and they are on their journey to figure out and really capture their true hero-ness. Which completely blew my mind because the hero's journey is on the wall multiple times in Egypt. The hero is Horus, but the hero in the ancient Kemetic language is Heru, or hero, Heru. And the story of Heru is shown on the wall as starting out as the individual and then suddenly becoming Horus ascended. So I got really excited to learn all about that. That was it was actually my first time learning that and hearing more about that. And now I'm starting to go down the rabbit hole, which I was told I was going to do. And even that statement, going down the rabbit hole, what story is that from? That's from Alice in Wonderland. Same thing. She also had a hero's journey. She had a lot of weird people along the way, but it's the same story. It's the same story that maybe originated. I believe almost everything probably originated there, but it was definitely put on the walls to where now you can see like, this is the story that they started with, that they told. It's the hero's journey. And that story you can see over and over and over again. There are multiple different story arcs. There's like 7 common story archetypes, like rags to riches, overcoming the monster, tragedy, comedy. Maybe I do know all 7. There and back, like the voyage, the return, things like that. If you've never heard the song, go listen to it. But I think my main story has always been the rags to riches because that's always been my quest. Oh, that's one of them, the quest. But my quest has been to bring myself out of my circumstances. I never really had money. We didn't grow up rich, right? So I grew up basically middle class, and I'm very thankful for what I do have and how I did grow up. It brought me to where I am now. And at the same time, I always felt like there's more for me. When it comes to telling stories related to trauma, one of the best pieces of advice I was given is to teach from the scar and not the wound. Teach from the scar and not the wound. What that means is if you have a wound, it's open and it hurts, it's difficult to teach from that place. However, once that wound has scarred over, now you can talk about the moral of the story and what you've learned and how you feel about it. It's the reason that, I tell people, if you're going through a lot right now, you're not required to tell your fans, your followers, your friends, like things that are going on with you right now. And there's such a push for like, quote unquote, authenticity at the expense of you are processing what is happening to you right now. I'm all for authenticity and being authentic, but not at the expense of your own healing. And I think a lot of people miss that because they feel like, well, this person's just being fake, or they're not sharing this, or they're not sharing that. It's the reason that you'll see a lot of YouTubers that are like, hey, I'm back. Where have I been? And in the comments, you see some supportive comments and you see some other people like, well, this is why, people don't share. They need to share. It's like, no, like everything is not for everybody and everything is not for everybody to consume. So going back to the point of how can you talk about trauma, it's all about teaching from the scar and not the wound. So if you feel like you're at a point where you can talk about it without getting emotional again, then yes, it's okay for you to share it as a teaching moment for your audience, for your clients, for, your social media, and et cetera, et cetera. But if it's something you're still processing, like it's okay to put up a face and put up a wall and like not talk about it right now, because what you're processing and what you're going through, you're going to be able to pull those lessons out from it later. And so speaking about a traumatic experience, you should be removed from it far enough so that you can actually talk about it. And then when you're talking about that experience, you don't necessarily have to give the details of it. What you're giving is the lessons that you've learned from it, the lessons that traumatic experience gave you. So that is what I have today when it comes to story selling. I hope that is helpful for you. Couple call to actions. Join us in our free Facebook group. It's at latisha.tv/group. Right now, what we're doing is I've created a viral post. My goal is for it to go viral, where you can get featured. So I started with my post, I tagged 3 people. Those 3 people have to each create a post and they have to tag 3 people and so on and so forth. When you get tagged, you get to share your business, you get to share your freebie, you get to tell us more about yourself. And my goal is for all 600 plus members in the group to have a chance to share. And based on how things go viral, as long as all 3 people create their posts and tag 3 more people, we should be able to get to all 600 members before the end of the month. So looking forward to that. That's latisha.tv/group. So I'm actually excited, like seeing all the posts that are coming up. If you want to become a channel member, click join. And Path to 6 Figures is opening for our next December cohort. So we'll be doing a challenge leading up to that. More details on that coming soon. I think that's it. All right. Thanks so much for joining me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below if you enjoyed this. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay. Bye.